going to be a little bit distant so we can talk without masks when we're away from you. And I'm going to I'm trying to measure my pace because when I get really excited, apparently I talk really fast. So every Sunday morning, there's always a flurry of things that comes out of my mouth before I calm down. So welcome to our HARC meeting for September. The year seems to be zooming by really quickly. So it's good to see you. It's good for us to be back in the rhythm. I know we're on the edge of not being able to meet together, and we're having a really big space to do it. Thank you to Christ Reformed for the space that we meet in today. Thank you for allowing us to do this. Thank you all for wearing masks and sitting apart and all of those things that we do. It's good to see you. It's just good to be together. I am Reverend Elizabeth Jackson, and I am a pastor at Otterbein United Methodist Church just down the street. And I'm the president of HARC. I'm finishing my second year as the president of HARC. So nothing I aspired to when I joined the board of HARC. I didn't realize that I'm entering into some whirlwind, but here we go. And it's been, my 2 years as president has been a lot. I'm just going to say it to you, it's been a lot. There's been COVID, there's been Kathy leaving, there's been someone else coming, there's been someone going, there's been Kathy coming back. That was the good part of a lot, right? So it's just been a lot, and we found that a lot of the regular things that we do, our regular meetings where we talk about budgets and leadership and those kind of things, kind of fell by the wayside. We did some programming in HARC during kind of lockdown times, and we're starting to get back into programming. But I wanted to share with you today, as my part of welcoming you, a lot of you picked up this document on the way in. It says HARC Priorities and Goals for Board Planning, July 2021. And I want to familiarize you with this document. I want to tell you a little bit about where it came from, and I want to encourage you to be an encourager to the board to continue to work on the goals and to refine the goals that we have so that our mission matches the membership. There's a lot of things that we're doing as a HARC board. We're trying to get back onto solid footing, right? Trying to make sure that we've 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 now, we went through some mission statement work and went through some, set some goals for ourselves as a community and followed along with those as themes, but we felt like that we could probably do a better job of being more focused. And so that's what this is. The board took an entire day. We invited, all the board was able to come in some fashion. And then we also had some members of the community that also came. And we sat down to really talk about what we feel like the needs are in the community and how we feel like HARC is particularly positioned to be helpful in those ways. And to have, for me as the board president, it was pretty important that I think we kept it together and kind of kept the status quo for a while, kind of moving us forward, but we really wanted to start moving forward intentionally. So what you'll have here is a proposal for a revised mission statement that the board is working on. What you also have, and I love these, are belief statements. And part of this is out of wanting to make sure that we engage the community as much as possible. So when someone comes to the HARC website, we want them to be able to look at the words we believe and to be able to understand what we believe as a community. And if they believe that too, then they know that this is a community that is right for them and is the right fit for them. So this number 2 is pretty important. We believe what we believe in. And then it goes on, out of this, some ways it's chicken and egg, right? Because you believe. But when you really talk about what's important, when you go through the rest of the document, you talk about in the community what we think the needs are, in the community what we think is important, then our we believe statements become refined by that, right? So we can say what we're for, but then we actually look at where we're willing to put our effort. Really excited at the work that Kathy has done with others in putting together the racial justice team. And that's something that just kind of bubbled up toward the end was bubbling up before Kathy returned, and she has picked that up and run with it and put together a very diverse community group to do that, to work on racial justice issues and to be the guidance for HARC in the things that we should focus on and move forward. So, and we're excited about following that same model for some of the other things on this paper. So the important thing, the paper is not just something we want to give you like it's a business meeting and here you go. What we're giving you is a work in progress. And what we're giving to you is an opportunity for you as the membership of HARC and the guests that are here with us that are also part of our community to give us feedback into what's important, what you also believe, how you do and don't believe what we're saying that we believe. So this can really be a refinement, and we really can be a reflection of the group that we have as HARC and the church partners and community members and everyone that comes alongside us to make things happen as HARC. So I just wanted to let you know that. In that regard, also, because we haven't had business meetings and those kind of things, I want to share with you that some changes that are being made on the board and membership. The officers have stayed the same, and I believe we have agreement from everyone to stay in place for one more year so we can have a good transition to other. Todd's giving me that I'm not so sure wave, but I'm sure everybody turn around and give a look at Todd so he knows he's going to stay. Thank you. In that regard, I just wanted to make sure to highlight, you all know that, I believe you all know that Jake Caldwell is leaving First Christian. His last Sunday is this coming the 19th. And he wanted to step back to be able to step fully into his new opportunities, and he wanted to step back to also make sure that he made room for other clergy or lay people to step onto the board in his stead. So Jake is departing from us. I'm in denial about that, but that's a whole other story because he's stepping down as our vice president. So we've got some leadership space to fill there. I want to welcome, in the room with us today is Rachel Nichols in the back, in the blue, has joined our board. You all know that Ari has relocated, our past president Ari Close has relocated to Florida, and Rachel is now our representative for B'nai Abraham, so thank you for filling that role. And Chris Serafusa here right there. Chris comes from St. Andrews, so he's one of my United Methodist clergy brethren and just a wonderful human being. And so we welcome both of them on the board. I'm not here with us, but I think many of you may have met her. She's really jumped in with both feet, is Tanya Anderson. And so Tanya is with us as well. She's was really part of the beginning of the racial justice team as well. And Rachel and Chris and Tanya have all just jumped in and been really willing to jump right in, and they haven't hung back at the edges and kind of wait to see what, how the board works before they jump in, and they've just been a real blessing to us. So if you have questions about that, please do read it. This document, I know we get these things and we take them home and we put them in the HARC file. I do the same thing. Kathy knows that. Sometimes she's like, "Do not read what I send you." Read it, take a look at it. Recognize that as you represent the community, as you represent our partner churches, as you represent other organizations, that it matters that we're on the same page, because if we're going to live into what we think that we can do more together, then we got to be together on the same page. So I invite you to give us feedback. Positive, negative, doesn't really matter, because it all makes us better when we refine this. So I'm going to stop going on about that, because I'm very happy about this, and I'm very proud about the board and the way that they came together to do all of this, and Kathy for steering that and putting it together and refining it in a way that you can digest it. I'm just immensely proud of this. Have very little to do with it, but I'm very proud of it. With that, we're going to get into the normal kind of rhythm of the meetings that we have. I welcome you on behalf of the HARC board and on behalf of the community. I welcome you here today, especially our visitors that are with us. I'm very excited about the program that we have. I want to ask Reverend Mary Jane Norval, who's here from Christ Reformed, to open us in prayer.
So welcome. Thank you for coming and taking time out of your day to participate in this today. Bathrooms, you probably saw that the women's restroom is right down there. The men's restroom, if you go through this and up the stairs, you will be able to find that. All right, let's pray. Our Creator, we thank you for being present with us today. We thank you for providing us with new opportunities. Please open our minds to learn and grow in what you have for us today. Please open our hearts to increase our love and our sharing of who we are, and of growing and providing comfort and care in this community. Please help each of us this day to learn and be present with you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Okay, just a few announcements before I introduce our speakers and we start our program for today. First thing I want to say, well, actually I want to tag on just for a moment on what Elizabeth said about the strategic planning and the document that you have. that these are priorities where we felt HARC needed to take a lead or really be strongly focusing our efforts. That doesn't mean we don't care about other things. Like the program that we're bringing to you today is not listed in our priorities, but it is an important thing for the community. Other things where our houses of worship had an interest and a concern, our role is then to maybe bring you together to focus on these areas on your own, or bring you information and resources so that houses of worship can still be effective in those areas. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if you don't see something on that list, it doesn't mean we don't care about it. It's just that we cannot focus on everything and do it well. So I wanted to give a shout out, a thanks to everyone who helped out with the HARC Hike for Hunger and Hope. The first and main part of that event was this past Saturday. It was a great success. God had a lot to do with that because we had beautiful weather, and there's always little pieces, little missteps, things that aren't perfect, and God just made it all right. So we were very blessed, but I want to thank some specific people. Ed Poling is really the leader of this hike and has been doing that for many years now. This was the 9th annual, and he really does all the logistics and build a footbridge so that everybody could get across the canal when it was all muddy and wet. Things like that. Those are the pieces that Ed picks up. Sue Wirt, hello, give a shout out. All right, so Sue, it was her birthday on Saturday, and yet she was out there coordinating the food. So great appreciation. And just so many other people were engaged in this. I can't list everybody who did it, but I'm grateful for the volunteers and the whole team that coordinates this. We currently estimate, see, this isn't over, we've got a challenge hike in about a week and a half where a group of us are hiking for 20 miles on the Appalachian Trail. So we don't have final numbers yet. Hey, Brenda, could you grab the door? Yeah, thanks. But currently we estimate about $21,000 in proceeds, which is a record year. So thank you so much for your support. There were a lot of sponsors who helped, including a lot of churches. MS Johnston and Beth Johnston were top sponsors, and First Christian Church. Also, thank you to UUCH, the Unitarian Church, St. Mark's Episcopal Church, Trinity Lutheran Church, St. Andrew Presbyterian Church, Hebron Mennonite Church, and Coldwell Banker Innovations for sponsoring, and Christ Reformed Church, Nazarene Church, Valley Grace Brethren, and St. John's for providing transportation, and Celebration Ministries. All right, so now that that's done, you've got flyers for the International Peace Day celebration. That is September 26th, so please try to attend that if you can. That's Interfaith Coalition puts on that event. And there was another little flyer that I handed that's over there, just a little thing for the League of Women Voters. And Richard is a coordinator in that, Richard Wilson. And this is Constitution Day. It's going to be a YouTube event. And Fanny Crawford, if anybody's ever heard her do storytelling, she's incredible. And she's talking about thoughts on the Constitution from the memoirs of a freed slave, because her great-grandfather was a freed slave. Okay, that's all the announcements that I have. And now I'd like to introduce speakers. Our first speakers today, and all of you all can sit up here if you like and take off your masks when you speak. Laura Sheffield-Bishop. And Laura is, yeah, there, and Kelly Marquart. They're both with the Washington County Health Department. Laura is a social work supervisor and also a co-coordinator for ROSC, Recovery-Oriented Systems of Care. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay. And Kelly is a peer recovery specialist. She's going to tell you a little bit more about what that is. And also a ROSC coordinator. Clarence Horst. Well, yes, please give Clarence a hand. Clarence Horst is owner, director, runner of Celebration Ministries and Celebrate Recovery. Many of you probably already know Clarence. He's also on the board of REACH and the Mission, and he owns Coldwell Banker Innovations, and what's the name of your building company? Hagerstown Builders. I don't know when the man sleeps, to be honest. But Clarence is a wonderful man of faith, and we look forward to hearing his words as well. The way this is going to work is Laura and Kelly are going to speak first for about 15 minutes. And then Clarence will speak for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have probably about 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. So please, hold your questions until after they speak.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting us today. And we're really excited to speak with you about some of the initiatives that we're doing here at the health department. So first off, happy 32nd anniversary of National Recovery Month. Recovery for every person, every family, and every community. Earlier today, we actually had a Washington County Recovery Orienting Systems of Care meeting that was held virtually. And we had the privilege of having Senator Chris Van Hollen and then Congressman David Trone speak for us. And then we had several other guest speakers as well. So after today's meeting, please feel free to go on the Washington Goes Purple page because that video will be uploaded, and then you guys can hear their remarks that they made today about national recovery. So I'm here to talk more about the Washington County Recovery Orienting Systems of Care. So you're going to hear it called ROSC. And so what that is it's a coordinated network and community-based services and supports that's person-centered and builds on the strengths and resiliencies of individuals, families, and communities to achieve abstinence and to improve health, welfare, and quality of life with those that are at risk for substance use. So as we all have seen, when COVID-19 happened, right, it really has exaggerated a lot of the substance use that we're seeing in our community. So I'm sure after we get to the Q&A, we can probably talk a little bit about that and how we can kind of collaborate and support one another in building a village, supporting those. And so the whole idea of Washington County ROSC is to build an infrastructure where we can support not only like our providers and businesses, but also what we call, and I'm going to use quotes here because I hate the word, but the consumer, right? The individuals that are part of the behavioral health system. So Kelly and I have done a lot of work to really structure this initiative. So the first part is what we've done is we have created a lot of resource sharing, more virtual platforms for just the community, but more geared towards like our businesses and our local providers that do mental health and substance use. The whole idea is we want to build that village. So help our providers essentially that deal with individuals and how to link them to services. And so some of that might be just education. So we can provide just continued education. We can get several people from the state to come in and again to just continue to provide that. The other side of that is again dealing with that again quote unquote consumer group. And Kelly has renamed it, which I just love. It's called the ROSC Recovers Group because we want to eliminate stigma, right? So we did rename that. And so with the ROSC Recovers Group, it's a group where we can do community events. So on Saturday, on September 11th, we did the first annual recovery cookout, and it was very successful. We had a lot of people that attended, and it was just a time for people to gather, to celebrate, and to really feel connected with others. And so our whole idea is we want to transform the behavioral health system in Washington County. And what that means is we really want to be able to help individuals regardless of what door they come into. So, for instance, again, we'll talk probably again about this later, but I'm sure, again, what you guys are seeing is people saying, hey, I need help. And so some people say, well, I don't know what the first step is to that, or what do I say? I don't want to be stigmatizing to that person. I want them to come back. And so the whole idea of ROSC is to really create this platform and helping the community to really just serve the person that's in front of you. So Kelly and I, I should back up. The first step that we're doing is building community relationships. So again, that's why we're really excited to be here, because we really want to build that with you. Second is that we're going to do a community needs assessment. So what do we have in the community and what do we need? So we have kind of thrown some ideas around, like maybe NAMI for mental health. I'm trying to think of some of the other goals that we've talked about. It'll come to me later, but we've thrown around a lot of ideas, right, to say how can we bring things to Washington County that would be really helpful, that might be lacking. The other thing that Kelly and I have done is we've actually connected with other counties to build those relationships, because we know that individuals don't just stay in one county, right? Like individuals might go through cross county. Again, how do we build those relationships so we can just, when they're in front of us, especially if they're in crisis, how do we help them? So we're really working hard on just trying to establish that platform, and again, especially the resources, because I know that comes up a lot. Like people will call and say, well, what resource do you have for somebody who needs to go inpatient, or somebody needing peer support, or somebody needing food? And again, it's just important to have that all together to kind of streamline it, so again, when somebody's in front of you, we know how to serve them. The last part is that we are looking to go to basically all businesses that's not substance use or mental health related. We want to target businesses just like a gas station, for instance, right? So there might be a gas station that has a lot of overdoses. We want to be able to go there and talk to staff and say, hey, let's do a behavioral health crisis training. So if you have somebody that overdoses in the bathroom, how do we intervene at that moment? So that way they don't feel helpless, and again, we can help that person, because guess what? They came in through the wrong door for treatment or needing help. So again, we're trying to really streamline it, and that's what ROSC is about: coordination, community relationships, and again, just how do we make this all work together?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I'm going to share some data about what's happening in our community. These results are between 1/1/21 and 9/7/21. We have had a total of 295 overdoses, 214 of them in the city and 81 of them in the county. 34 of those overdoses were fatal, 23 in the city and 11 in the county. Break those down a little bit. Heroin/fentanyl was responsible for 264 of those overdoses. Spice was responsible for 8 of those overdoses. Pills, responsible for 14 overdoses. PCP, responsible for 4 overdoses. Methadone, responsible for 2 overdoses. Methamphetamine, 1 overdose, and 2 unknown drugs were caused for 2 overdoses. As far as pregnancy and smoking goes in Washington County, our pregnant smokers here, there has been a 10.2% higher rate in Washington County, and it has been consistently higher since 2012. And if I'm not mistaken, we're leading the state of Maryland. So that's very concerning. The bigger question, I guess, here is, what are you folks seeing in your neighborhood, and how can we as ROSC help support you and problem solve with whatever you have going on in your backyard?
Sorry, I just wanted to add a couple things too while I'm thinking about it. So I just want to highlight the division programs. Some of you may not be familiar with what we do. So I supervise multiple programs. I wear a lot of hats. And so the primary areas that I work with is substance use and pregnancy. So when we have a mother that's pregnant and/or has children, I can do an assessment and help them get into residential treatment with their children. And then I follow up with them throughout the duration of treatment. And then when they're discharged, I get them connected back to our division. Kelly can talk a little bit about peer recovery services, but she offers that into the community as well. So she will go out, regardless if they're engaged in treatment or not, but we do target a lot of the treatment programs, and we offer that service just because we want to enhance the care that they're receiving. Research shows, and again, Kelly, I'll have you detail what that looks like, that individuals engaged in peer recovery services, they actually stay in treatment, and they actually have better long-term outcomes. So that's really critical when we talk about substance use care and treatment. Patricia, who's sitting over there, she does our state care coordination program. So what she does is she provides case management and peer support as well to individuals that are engaged in treatment, but more so coming out of inpatient. So a lot of times when people are going inpatient, they were in a crisis, right? So they may, when they come out, it's like, now what? What's the next step? So she's there to really help them in that transition. And then also we have funds for those individuals to help them get some of their other needs met. So that may include like housing, like if they need to pay their first month's rent. Sometimes it's clothing, educational needs, so we can get really creative because we know long-term, again, meeting basic needs, individuals are more successful with recovery with mental health and also substance use. We also have a coordinator that deals specifically, again, with women and children. So she can service women that have children up to the age of 17. And she provides, again, peer support and case management. So that also means if they need to go into treatment, she can get them into treatment, but then again, she follows them consistently. We also, we're also doing a new initiative I should probably add to you because you're probably going to start to hear about it. It's called the START program. So it's called Sobriety and Treatment Recovery Team. So we're going to have, it's called a family mentor, but it's a peer recovery. As this individual is going to be housed at the Department of Social Services. So they're going to be directly in the DSS team, and then they're going to go with a lead worker from the Department of Social Services and into the homes. So what we're doing is we're targeting high-risk families for substance use, and that family mentor will follow those families to ensure that they're going into treatment and figuring out if there's barriers, why they're not going, and so forth. Because the goal is we want to unify families and help them get the treatment that they need. And so again, that's another initiative that the state is doing.
I'll make it short and sweet about peer support. I know we don't have much time. I know everyone has a specialty. Some peers work with people who are still using. Trish works with people who are coming out of rehab. There's pregnant and postpartum. I always say I get the leftovers, so I get community. So I take anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you have any mental health or substance use concerns, I take you. Quickly, a few things what our peer support staff does. One, we can advocate for them. So if they go to a doctor or someplace where they feel like they're being treated a certain way or their voice isn't being heard, I can go with them or speak for them, that type of thing, advocate for them. The second thing is if they get overwhelmed or get anxiety because they have phone calls to make, papers to fill out for housing, they can't, get their stuff together. They can't get organized. I can help them with that. Another thing, I call it business. So if they're looking for housing or transportation or a job, food, resources, referrals, I can help them along with that. But the last two I think are most important. Unlike what Laura does, they tell me what they feel is beneficial to their mental health and their substance use concerns, what they want to work on. So if they want to work on budgeting or self-care or yoga, or they just want to sit there and color, Whatever they think benefits them, that's what we do. They get the final say. And with peer support, they have a safe space. So we are mandated reporters, but whatever we talk about is strictly between the patient and myself. We don't go back to parole and probation or whatever rehab they're in or their counselor or anything like that. So in addiction, they say your secrets keep you sick, right? So this way they have a place where they can say what's on their mind or what's on their heart and feel comfortable that to know that we're not going to judge them or stigmatize them so they can share and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Clarence. I've had the privilege of working in the addiction community for about the last 13 years through a program called Celebrate Recovery that we work through HARC habits and hang-ups. Also housing units. We have 6 different housing units, mainly for men. We recently opened one for women and children to reconnect that. And employment. That's why I'm so dirty today. We're giving people opportunity for employment to try to make a difference in that. There was a statement made early on that you said, what do we believe? In a group like this, there's a lot of different faith streams and different levels of belief of God and Jesus and all those type of things. So I want to keep it at a 50,000 foot view of what do we believe about homelessness and addiction. And until I individually answer that question, I'm really not going to be very effective in reaching out to the person that comes to my church door I see on the corner of the street or falling out by the bus station. You know, I would encourage you, hear nothing else I say today. I think that's something in each of our faiths we have to wrestle with. What do I believe about that? I don't know what you believe. All I can do is share from my faith what I believe. I believe that everyone matters. And I believe that every person has a God-given potential. And if I look at it from that angle, then that potential can overdrive the fear that many times I feel encountering somebody that maybe doesn't act, look, smell, or function the way I think they should. Because maybe they're doing it differently than I am. But when I realize, and for me, that I realize that God has created each person with great potential, then I can look at a person with compassion and love, whether they're panhandling on the corner or whether they're falling out across the street. Because in my experience in recovery, it really comes down to 2 things that cause people to get into addiction. One's buried pain and the other's mental illness. We have all kinds of fancy terms we use for it. We call it diseases, we call it addiction, we bias, we categorize people at all kinds of things. And I'm not an expert in any means. I'm just telling my experience from the faith community. Those are the 2 primary things you run into. One is mental illness, but mostly it's buried pain. And until the buried pain is dealt with, you can't give enough soup, blue jeans, you can't give enough housing. Nothing will fix that buried pain. All you're doing is putting masks and Band-Aids on things. So as a faith community, what I realize is we are stuck in a really tough place between faith and fear. Because on one hand, we believe in God, most of us. We believe that God has great opportunity for our lives. But we're afraid of what we don't understand. We're afraid of people because maybe they're acting differently or not doing the right kind of behavior. One of the things I realized is, as you were sharing, is that the relationship you build with certain individuals is what really is going to make a long-term difference. Weighing out what is the mental illness that you cannot, no matter how good a friend you are with mental illness, you may not be able to overcome that. But if it's a buried pain, a lot of times, as you said, we're not going back to probation. We're not squealing out to the cops. We're allowing a person to talk. And as a faith community, we have this thing called a cup of coffee. And it is amazing if you will just sit down with somebody. I've encouraged a lot of people, they see somebody on the street and God's got a compassion to them. Get a cup of coffee and don't invite them someplace. Go sit on the curb. Got a good friend in Baltimore. He's made it a kind of a mission. He come out of drugs and alcohol and gang member. He now takes a soda and goes sits on the curb by someone and just talks about their life. And it's amazing as the faith community, if we can have the opportunity to see the potential in people, then we're not directed by fear, but we're directed more by faith. But if I don't really firmly believe that God really has good things for each of us, then I'm going to function by fear. And when I function by fear, I will not engage. Now let's be honest. Sometimes we shouldn't engage. If it's mental illness, we should not engage. I have a good friend that almost got his head blown off the other night because he was trying to help somebody that had mental illness and had drug addiction in the same vein. That is a very dangerous place, and we must be cautious, but at the same time, we can't live totally in fear. There's a difference between living in fear and living in intelligence. When we realize that we come to that place that if God really has good things, then we as the faith community should be the spiritual answer. Because the root of that, of drug addiction, is a spiritual need. The pain, the mental illness, but it's spiritual. And there's a lot of things goes on in people's lives that gets them to that place. One of our housing units, I remember a couple years ago, we had 5 guys living in it. All those men had either lost their business or something and were living homeless, and we got them into a place of safety. All 5 of them at that time had had a significant event happen with their spouse or significant other. And because there wasn't a spiritual foundation, the enemy's whispering in your ear the lie, come with me. The next thing, they're off to addiction and alcoholism and this downward spiral. One of the things I would encourage us as a faith community, that we have to redirect our fear to a faith that God really does care about each person. He cares about me. And then we can act out of love. And you say, well, what does love look like to a homeless person? What does that look like? Well, the other day in front of this church, I had the opportunity to keep a guy from getting arrested because he was strung out on spice. The cops didn't know who he was. I come up the street, I saw who he was. I knew the man. I had a relationship with him from a distance. And I said to myself, I think that's so-and-so. I went around the block, came back around. He was a boogered up mess laying there on the street, cops around him. I just walked up to him. I called him by name. I looked him right in the eye and I said, when are we going to get some help? The cops fortunately backed off. We got the man cleaned up, got him back to his apartment. Because you have a relationship, I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that because God will give you opportunities and relationships with certain people. One of the challenges, if I can be so bold and brash in the church, is we're really good about doing big events. We're really good about having picnics, and we're real good about having parties, and we're real good about getting everybody together in the neighborhood. But when it's all said and done, after the potato salad's all spoiled and everybody went back to their house, the addict's going back to his addiction. The single mom's going back to her kids that she can't take care of. The one that's couch surfing is going back to that same place. If we as a church or faith community can get beyond the potato salad and get into relationships, I think we have opportunity to see real change. It's slow. There's an initiative that's been talked about many times in this town called Housing First. Put people in housing so that they can really start getting stabilized. Statistics are very good for that. We struggle with that mentally as a people group, how we're going to do that when this person seems like they should justify it more than that person. I know it's tough things to deal with. But the opportunity for us as a faith community, if I can encourage you with anything, we don't need, as Open Table says, we don't need more beans and jeans. There is so many places. People come up to me and say, I want to start a homeless outreach to feed the city. I said, please find another town. There is so many places you can eat. There is so many places you can get. You can go eat 3 or 4 times in the same day. I'm not saying that critically. I'm just saying I think that is not the root of what we need. We need people of faith that will interact, as you're saying, like a peer counselor almost, interact so someone can open up their life and they can share about what's going on. Today I've got a guy that's hanging siding on a house. 6 months ago, he's eating out of a dumpster behind the Chinese restaurant. Sick. A man that had his complete business lost, his family. A man that went to the best schools. A man that his parents worked in government. Lost it all eating out of a dumpster because of addiction. Because I knew him, I took a personal responsibility to help see him come to a different opportunity if he wanted it. One of the things I realized I close with is, because I put number 130 and that's like 129, and it says that if I believe that God has good things for each of us, and we believe in our faith stream that our God that we worship has the answer for our needs and the needs of those around us, then we need to find a way to create a safe environment so that God can do what only God can do. You and I can't fix nobody. You and I really, we can talk, we can listen, we can counsel, but unless in my faith belief that God does something inside of a person's heart, something pains, something changes, something drives forward with hope, we're just running around handing out beans and jeans. When we really get to the point where we can sit down, have a cup of coffee or a soda on the curb with someone and say, I'll make a difference one-on-one. It's not fancy. You don't have big numbers that say, hey, you know what? We had 30,000 people last week come to all of our events. But imagine what it means to that one person if we could just take the focus on one person. A motto of our ministry, Celebration Ministries, is changing the city one life at a time. We don't care about numbers. We care about the one. Because Christ cared about me. Because my God cared about me. And I think as a faith stream, we have a responsibility to look someone in the eye and say, can I walk with you? And it's not pretty, and it stinks, but it makes a difference. Thanks, let me share.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Who overdoses? Of the overdoses, how many would be residents for a year or more?
They are Washington County
Yeah,
residents.
these are Washington County
For
residents.
their whole life?
Well, I'd have to, so some of the data that I have came from, her name is Victoria Sterling. She's our local addiction authority. It came from Victoria Sterling, who's our local addiction authority. So I can certainly follow up on that question. The data that we collect is usually within like a year time frame, and then we compare back, to each year. But I do know that these are Washington County residents. Now, and it's not captured in this data, but sometimes people are from other counties that have come up. And if you want to speak.
Yeah, I do want to speak on that. 3 things actually. He said a motto, so I just want you guys to know my motto is love is an action word. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what you're doing or what you're saying, we actually have to put the action into that love. Secondly, as far as mental health is concerned, please don't be afraid. No one's going to bite you. I promise. Maybe. But there's a lot of different pathways to recovery. Not one path works for everyone. So whoever you encounter, they might drink Darjeeling tea, and that might work for them, and somebody else might use that orange spice tea. So the pathway is different for each person. As far as the Washington County citizens living here all their lives, so what happens in recovery is they try to change the person fighting the addictions, people, places, and things. So what's happening, and I know I've told Laura this many times, is, for example, Baltimore comes here and starts their lives. And Hagerstown residents get sent there and they start their lives. We all switch. But the thing to consider is they are now our residents. They're here working in our community, going to our churches, their children's going to our schools. So they are a part of our community. They are long-term Washington County residents, potentially. Yes, ma'am.
Hang on, Brenda, I'll bring it to you.
I would say briefly that I can attest to the success of that process. I worked with a gentleman for several years as a literacy student of mine, and that's exactly what happened. He was in Ocean City, strung out, drunk all the time, ended up being on the street, almost dead, and was hospitalized for quite a long time. He was brought here, and he went through some halfway houses, and just, was able to be successful in his recovery. Because he was not there with his friends and not there with his lifestyle and the places he used to go. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I felt like that helped him a lot.
What do you do with this? My name is Pastor Sharon Gibson. I pastor at Berry right across the street. And my church has become kind of a habitat for a lot of the homeless in the Jonathan Street corridor. And I guess over the last 2 or 3 months, we've had one lady that I have not encountered yet. My layperson has, and even my son has encountered her. And so I was at a loss. I do have strong compassion for those that struggle with substance and alcoholism. I tell my children it could have been me years ago, but God said no. I wanted to be at this particular meeting when I saw that it was related to drug addiction and so on. But my question, and parents, you kind of answered that we have to do a one-on-one. Maybe would be more effective for those that are on the street, because again, I catch them all. I catch the homeless, I catch those that are on addiction, and I'm at a loss. My only thing is, my only thought a few years ago was to get a trailer from the government and set it up on that little piece of property that we have to be able to help them some kind of way. But now I just have a thought that maybe we could set up a booth on the parking lot for them to come and maybe register to sign up to get help. Because definitely my church community here, we're in a desperate situation. And I just had my children's dad was just funeralized up here 2 Saturdays ago. And the Saturday before that, the community, when we came up to do some renovations on the exterior of the church, it was just chaos in the community. And I just have strong compassion. And what can I do? What can I do to make a difference in my church community? And I'm just one person. But again, I have strong compassion for those. There's a young man who is on the streets here in Hagerstown, and he's been sent to a recovery place up in West Virginia, but then he checks himself out, and then he's back out on the street. He was only about 20, 21 or 22. And so how my dilemma is how do we save them? How can we save those young people?
You kind of got to meet them where they are, and what they need in that moment. That's in their mind that they need in that moment to be saved. It might be food. They might need a shower. They might need fresh undergarments. So, well, for me, I know everyone works a little differently. Meet them where they are right now. if you go directly to them and say, okay, we're going to get you into rehab, okay, they might not be ready. Right now, the only thing they can fixate on is, I want a can of soup, or I want to, find somewhere to lay my head for the night. I'd like to give you my phone number, because I would love to sit with you and talk how we can work together, all of us.
A colleague of mine did recommend, because I didn't know what to do as far as the lady that's been sleeping on our ramp. And, clothing and a little bit of everything we have found from her taking up residence there I don't know if she's there every night, but I know usually on Sunday morning she's there because we invited her to come in, and one Sunday she said she wasn't feeling good, so she left.
And I know a lot of times peers, like I work with the beautiful ladies back here at Reach, we've worked together. So everybody in the community kind of works together to take care of those people, so they will have somewhere to sleep and they will have something to eat. So maybe
what I did call the health department, and my son was able to meet her one Saturday, and she did give him her name, and I gave her name to the representative that I talked to in the health department. And they said that they were going to send somebody out, but I know not this past Sunday, but Sunday before last, it was her food tray and drink cups were there at our side door, so I know. But I'm seriously thinking that, there ought to be something that, our religious council here can do. If no more than have a van that, you have those mobile health vans that go around, but we need one for, for those that are struggling.
Well, we have a lot of those resources that are already in place. Homeless outreach programs. So I don't think we need another place for them to sign up. There's plenty of those. There's a street guide that actually gives a lot of those resources.
Oh, okay, but
Yep.
you have to kind of, like you said, you have to come to them. They're not going to.
The homeless teams go to them.
They do.
Yes. So that's part of the information you gather. Back there, if you see her hand up in the air, Jeannie, she's executive director of Reach. Right next to her is Jill. Jill does one of her case managers at Reach. They do case management people. The individual you're talking about, that I believe I know who you're talking about, she's been in multiple places around town. There's been multiple outreaches to help her, and she just does not want to take that. One of the challenges we face, let's be honest, as a faith community, is not everybody wants our help.
I know.
That's a real challenge. So I would ask that we as the faith community would ask God to reveal to us the ones we are to help, but we create a safe spot for everybody, because everybody has the opportunity, but not everybody's going to step into it. One thing I realized early on in working in recovery was I could spend way too much energy on somebody I wanted to see change that did not want to change. And that's the question. It's really, really hard when you're doing a food pantry, a closed bank, or whatever it is, how you're going to facilitate that in a way that you can manage. Just being honest. But I believe in my way, is we're all kind of saying it's that one-on-one peer counseling, meeting them where they are, trying to help what they're doing. And we just get so frustrated sometimes if people don't respond the way I'd like them to. One of the things I would encourage you in the faith community, I'm from a Christian faith. If you're here from a different faith, I'm not here to insult you, I just want to tell you what I believe. That Paul answers that question in the Christian faith, that what we do for people is not for people. We're doing it for Christ. And if we're doing it for Christ, we don't become disillusioned in the result. If we're doing it expecting something, I'm giving you this, so why aren't you now happy? I paid for 6 months' rent. Why are you on the street? If we're doing it for a person, we're always going to be disillusioned in addiction in the mental community. It'll just be. But if I'm doing it because Christ said do it, it doesn't matter the outcome, because God's responsible, the way I believe in the faith community. Very challenging, though. Downtown, very challenging.
Is it okay if I add something?
And I just want to say, don't worry. They'll recognize your face when they are ready.
That's
Yeah,
right.
they will.
Yeah.
Create a safe space so they're where to come.
So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so I just wanted to to kind of explain to you what's also happening on the clinical side.
So the biggest thing to emphasize is called the change model. So I would encourage you to really look at that. And the change model really talks about where people are at and where their motivation for change. Most clients are in, it's called pre-contemplation, and they're in denial that there's even a problem because they haven't been hit enough with consequences, or they just don't know. Because denial is a protective factor that our brain does. Because when we break through the denial, then we have to do something about that. And that's scary, just like you talked about fear. When people break through denial, they then go into another part of change, which is called contemplation, right? So they kind of, it's like a seesaw, right? I want to change, I don't know if I want to change, and they go back and forth. And this can happen for a really long time. So you could have, we'll say, Susie Smith in front of you today. She says, I want to go to treatment today. 2 hours later, she doesn't want to go. It's because she went back into that denial state. And we have to kind of, like Kelly said, meet them where they're at. And it's very, very frustrating. I have done outpatient mental health and substance use for almost 10 years, working with individuals primarily with both the co-occurring happening at the same time. And I can't tell you the number of patients I have left and come back and left and come back. But if we stick with them, a lot of times they will come back. And like Kelly said, they'll remember who you are. I've had clients call me after 10 years and say, hey, how are you? And I'm like, oh my, like I remembered, like, they weren't doing so well, right? And they'll say, I remember that one thing you said in group or in our session. And a lot of the times it's just empathy and compassion, because we get so frustrated and then we end up using stigma in a sense too, right? Well, why won't Jane change, right? And so we have to kind of look at the way we're speaking to the individuals. I think we're all guilty of it. I can say that, if I had a client from me 10 times, I probably am getting frustrated. But then I have to take a step back and say it's not me, it's where they're at, and how do we help and support them? Because change is the key, their motivation to wanting to change. The other piece, addiction is a disease. It is a medical condition. It is an underlying medical condition that we have to remember. If they did scans of the brain, you will see that there's actually changes in the brain. And so when we talk about people, places, and things, if somebody is triggered, right, so a good one is, right, they see one of their old friends, the brain highlights, like it'll just be hijacked within a millisecond, and they're right back into that addiction. So that's why it's really critical for that support and compassion and empathy, because we have to work with people where they're at. And again, what are your coping skills? Who are you connected with? And the faith base is very huge, that people are connected with. So I would really encourage you just to look at the change model, because I think it'll help you when you see individuals to say, aha, they're not ready, but, I can sit here on the sideline until they're ready. So I just, understand that frustration completely.
Can you send us the change model?
I absolutely will.
Yeah.
Well, we had one here first. It's like, oh, did you want to add to that? Or? Oh, she wants to go.
I'll wait. I know my turn is later, but I wanted to highlight that, and I'm going to love to speak with you soon. I would love that. On this street guide, and I'll highlight it later, this is designed to be folded in their back pocket, and it's just a little snapshot of the services. On here is homeless outreach. I feel like Clarence had a sneak peek to my notes, but all of it, ready for change, all of it. Thank you. But homeless outreach, that is the first call. And we're working with the city, collaboration to make a Change the Way You Give campaign. And a part of that is call homeless outreach. You see a homeless person who's sleeping in your doorway, they're at the dumpster by Weiss, they're downtown, call homeless outreach. Because they will be the first step. There is a mobile crisis unit. With everyone is understaffed, and they're working to beef that up. There is mobile crisis. They're working hard to get it 24/7. Right now it's one lady, and she does have to have off hours. But they're working to make that soon, year round. 24/7. There is also harm reduction for those with addiction. So these things are here. They need help. They're understaffed. We're working on it. But I just want homeless outreach. You see someone, you call, hit the extension, say where you are. Don't say, oh, I see a homeless person by the dumpster in the median. Say, It's specifically here, and they will go meet with them and start that connection. That's all I'll say until it's my turn.
I did when I called the health department, because it was a colleague of mine recommended that I call the health department. And again, I did identify myself and my church, and gave them the name of the person.
And like Kelly touched on, we all try to work together, so that wasn't wrong either. Oh, thank you. All right. Okay, so on the front is first, there's a shelter, it's an entry point, support centers, drop-in, things like that. If you look under support center, turning point, it's the third one down. So the second heading, support center, you have homeless outreach, that's the phone number, and that's the extension. However, also, if you are interested in some mental health, they're also turning point there. So no matter where they're looking, it's in both places, and that's intentional. Yes. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And I would love to get the updated version. I think we have an old one. Oh, yeah. Is it on the Reach website? I'll get it.
And I'll wait till my turn.
Awesome. Thanks.
Just to clarify, we're calling turning point.
Yes. Oh, it's called Shepherd Platinum. It's how to like 5-star first data. So turning point, their homeless outreach department. So that phone number is the main number to turning point, but their homeless outreach is that extension. And the minute you hear the recording, you punch it in, and you get directly to homeless outreach. You will likely get a voicemail because, excuse me, after noon, they actually go out and do when you call them. So if you get a voicemail that's checked daily, often, leave a message, let them know. Thank you.
And I can attest that it worked. I just used it yesterday, and Cindy was like, I'll be right out there and go see this woman. So.
I unfortunately have had firsthand experience with the services available at Washington County. My son tried to commit suicide, went to Washington County Hospital, and after 3 days was discharged to nowhere. He tried to get into the mental health system, and there were a lot of obstacles. He had to be homeless. He had to, the criteria was just absolutely unbelievable. He attempted suicide the second time in December of 2018. In January of 2019, he died from a fentanyl overdose. It's extremely discouraging when someone wants help and the family wants to help them in a way that we encouraged him to follow the steps. And the cracks, they weren't cracks. It was the Grand Canyon that he slipped through. It has bothered me for a long time that we talk about, he fell into that category of you mentioned the feeling bad, the pain. The pain was there. The addiction followed the pain. The addiction was to numb the pain. He was able to overcome the addiction, but when he had tried to commit suicide, because he didn't have an addiction, there was no place for him to go, which I found totally unacceptable. Attempt number 1, attempt number 2, attempt number 3 worked. So it's really hard for me to see. I struggle a lot with people that are homeless, that people want a label and they don't care and they don't want to help themselves. I don't believe that. I think that no one wants to live that way. I don't know anybody that chooses that gets up in the morning and says, you know what, I think I want to be homeless today, and I think I want to get out of the dumpster, and I think I want to live in the dirt. That's not how it is. And again, it bothers me that we talk a lot about things, but we don't do anything to sew up the cracks.
Well, I think that's one thing, Ross, recovery-oriented systems of care, that is our goal, to bridge those gaps between our community so that never happens to someone else's child. I know I'm very sorry for your loss. As a peer specialist, one of my jobs is to navigate through the system, so I understand your frustrations. So that's one reason I'm passionate about Ross, is to fill in those gaps, because there are big gaps, like you said. So that is really why Laura and I are passionate about what we do. You just said it right there. That's why we do what we do with Ross, because we don't ever want that to happen again. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we've got one more, and then we're going to need to wrap it up because we have another session starting at 2. Okay, maybe 2 quick questions.
Maybe this will be a segue into the next section. But first of all, I appreciate your sharing that pain of us, and a heart with you. There's not a single person probably in this room that is not affected by a mental health issue or an addiction issue. And we've talked a lot today about the very visible person who is suffering, but as faith communities, we have members in our own congregations that are suffering, and I struggle with this, that our clergy members may know about these things and have to keep a vow of confidentiality about them. But I just, I'm sorry if I'm going to ramble a little bit, but hope that we see the cases that are closer to home, that are not the obvious somebody is lying in the gutter, because not everybody that is addicted is the stereotype person that's laying in the street or living on the doorstep of our house of worship, and that we need to remember we are all B'Tselem Elohim, made in the image of God, and that even our fellow parishioners deserve our love and our attention and our affections than when they're suffering closer to home. And there's not going to be any one answer to any of these questions, but as Clarence has very eloquently said several times today, this one-on-one relationship building is a key, and it is a step-by-step, moment-by-moment program for everybody. But I did want to kind of just shine a light on those that are suffering, that are unseen.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, Sue, you're last.
Yeah, I'm here because we've got some homeless folks and we've always had addiction around our church neighborhood. So, and it's a concern. But meeting folks. And, meeting folks one-on-one, having empathy and love, something I'm sure that most of the clergy folks and lay people here are attuned to, learning to walk in the shoes of those who are addicted and know what their struggles are, to learn about the hurts and not to judge. But once we get to that point, when do we need to know more? I mean, are we obligated? They don't teach us this in seminary. Let's just put it that way. What is the next step? I mean, is it just being that welcoming person to say, hey, you're in a non-judgmental spot, and the light of God is shining on you, tell me what's going on if you want to. You know, I mean, all those positive things and empathy, etc. But do we need to have like a PhD or be licensed in anything, or I mean, or is it just love?
Clarence answered that.
Well, that's a loaded question because the answer to about everything in a person's life is love. The challenge is, and Jesus taught us this lesson as well, he loved everybody, but he didn't love everybody with the same action. Whenever he loved the blind man, he healed his sight. Whenever he loved the rich young ruler, he said, go sell your Mercedes. It was the same love. But the activity reveals itself differently. And in my belief, you don't know what that activity is until you have the one-on-one relationship. In our Celebrate Recovery, we call it a sponsor. And the sponsor is someone that you get to know, you trust, it could be someone at your church, get to know, to trust, and loves you enough to say you got a booger in your nose. Most people won't. And most people won't get honest enough because they don't feel confident enough to share with you. As Kelly said about, we're not going to the probation to talk about it because I want to know what's going on in your life so that I can ultimately help you find success. And one of the things I would encourage the faith community, love is not just doing stuff. Love is an action, absolutely. But so many times our love is codependency and not truly trying to help somebody get better. I want to read an interesting book. Read The Tragedy of Compassionate America. And it will tell you and show how much of what we do as a faith community hinders many times more than helps if we're not willing to go to that next step in true practical love. Love and compassion is that it gets you from the gut. You got to do something. You can't just get in your car and go home after you've had a community event. You got to do something, but we got to know what God wants us to do so that love is tailored for that person. Sell your Mercedes or bring sight to the blind. Same love, different outcome. That's just my opinion. I'm saying I'm right.
Okay.
Well, no,
this is it. That's good. That's it.
The other thing I just wanted to offer to all of you is, I mean, we will be more than glad to come over and do a training with you if that would be helpful. Kind of like a one-on-one that could we could, do some preset questions or statements you could say to individuals, and we could do just different things that could be helpful. So definitely let us know because we want to support you in that. And like you said, you don't have to have a PhD, but if you sometimes it is scary. What do I say to somebody that may not be so friendly? Because it's very intimidating. But again, we absolutely, that's what we're here for. And one last thing, when in doubt, refer to us. We will always serve, always. So when in doubt, please call us at the division, and we will make sure that every individual that you refer to us is connected. And again, thank you all for inviting us today.
I'll give you a real practical step to that right there. Every Friday night at West End Baptist Chapel, Winter Street School, the Winter Street School. We rent that facility from that church, and we do what's called Celebrate Recovery Hagerstown. It's a Christ-centered 12-step recovery program focuses on any hurt, habit, hang-up. Addiction, codependency, anger, divorce, any of those kind of issues. And we've had great success when a pastor or a leader will say, I'll go with you for a couple weeks. We've got a guy in our ministry that the pastor said, I know we can't minister to this guy, come out of the gangs and come out of drugs. Our church just is too white. We're not going to be able to do it. And they brought him for 4 weeks, and his life has been radically changed. You don't have to know anything. Just go with me to recovery. Everybody's welcome.
I think everybody needs to give these folks a big round of applause. Thank you so much to all of you for coming. And we're very grateful for your expertise and for your compassion and love in working with folks and helping to guide us in that as well. And thanks also to those who shared today. Our next step here is we have a meeting from 2 to 3. What I'd like you to do, we're going to stay in the same room, but we're just going to kind of turn our chairs around so that we're in a little bit of a circle, so that we're talking with one another, not with a stage. We have